Right on, right on. Good morning. It's Tuesday. We got Coby Dallin here,
So,
gracing us with his presence.
what are you talking about?
So we just started to talk about social credit scores. We talked about this because last night Chloe, she's doing some kind of like little paper for one of her school subjects, and it was on her opinion, her ideas around social credit scores. And so, social credit scores, these, I mean, I've heard them talk about, here and there for a year or two, I think, maybe. And as far as, okay, so what is a social credit score? And that basically, I'm going to probably butcher this. I probably don't have the exact right idea of this, but it would be around the idea that your actions, the things that you do, will give you a rating, like a credit score, basically. Kind of like if you look at a credit score, your credit rating in, at least in North America, I don't know what it's like in Europe, even though I live in Europe. Your credit score is like if you have a credit card and you use it and then you pay it off on time, you get a good credit score. If you have a mortgage, you have a good credit score.
Yeah.
Like if you're right, if you're making your mortgage payments on time. If you don't pay off your bills on time, your score goes down. Now, if you have a bad credit score, it's going to be hard for you to get a loan to maybe buy a car or get a mortgage to buy a house. So the credit score is literally helps you to work within the economy. Now, let's say you've got, lots of money, but you don't use your credit card. You always pay with cash, like for everything. You buy a car, cash, right? Then you actually don't develop your credit score. So sometimes that's also looked at a little bit negatively as well. So people look at this credit score to make decisions on your future, whether or not you're able to get the loan for that house, for example. So a social credit score, now let's take that and think about something like maybe Uber. Now, I've never used an Uber, but what I understand is that if you have an Uber account and I have the car, I'm the Uber driver, you ask for a ride, I give you a ride, you can rate me as a driver. It was the quality of the service, the quality of the car, did I get you, did I get lost, whatever. So you can give me a score for whatever reason based on what you think I deserve. And I'm also going to rate you as a passenger. Right. So now let's say I get a bad review from you. Well, that's going to affect my ability now to get the next lift, to get the next ride. And if you're a bad customer, same thing. But if we're good customers, then it's easier to get things. So that's kind of a form of a social credit score. But now I think in its sort of the current ideas would be, how does that get expanded? Right? So now I'm personally very much, there's times where it's helpful. I think it's kind of neat in this Uber thing. But where it becomes a slippery slope is that it's always going to be touted as something that is beneficial, it's convenient, it's for your safety, things like that. And those are, we're going to say, quote unquote, very good arguments because they're nice arguments. But the problem is that you're heading on the slope of going downhill. Who makes the decisions on what your score is like? And who makes decisions of how that's going to impact your life when we talk from a more economic point of view? So what I believe to be a very recent example in history of a very bad example of social credit would be the truckers' convoy, the truckers' protest in Canada, where they basically protest in the streets of Ottawa and shut down the city for a little while. Not the city, but a part of it. And what this was, okay, let's not get into the whole reasoning of the... No, that's part of it. That's part of it. the trucker protests in Canada, to me, was awesome. I loved it. I was never so proud to be a Canadian as when this trucker protest was going on. Now, there's a lot of people who are on my side and for it, and a lot of people who are against it. I do believe that a lot of people don't understand the argument. Now, the trucker protest began when Trudeau mandated vaccinations for truckers, particularly because of anybody crossing the border, right, into the US, because a lot of trade is going on between Canada and the US. Now, it was something like 85% of the truckers were already vaccinated anyway. But what Trudeau was saying was, no, you must get vaccinated. And if you are a trucker and you go into the US to pick up a load and you come back, or to deliver a load and you come back, you're going to have to now quarantine for 2 weeks if you've not been vaccinated. And so it was, well, in my mind, it was kind of ridiculous, because a trucker sits in his truck all by himself, right? He's really having very minimal exposure to people. On top of that is respiratory virus, so which means the virus has no idea where the border is, right? It's going to cross borders no matter what. On top of it, it was more the idea of the mandate. Like, if you came to me and you said, based on this research, based on what we know so far, this vaccine makes the most sense and we think it's our best strategy, would you please take it? I would look at the information, I would think, and I would seriously consider taking it, and I just might take it. And that's fine. But as soon as you tell me you must take it, there's a certain percentage of the population where the BS meter goes crazy and basically says, oh, hell no, I'm not taking it. For no other reason, even if it is a very good option, even if it is something that makes a lot of sense, the very fact that you told me I had to do it, that's a problem. That's a problem in a democratic society where somebody is making rules and enforcing rules that go against the Charter of Rights in Canada or the Constitution in the US. And it's down this ideological slope that has already been down so many times before with, let's say, Hitler in Nazi Germany. Let's say Lenin and Stalin in Russia. How about Mao in China? There is never...
That's not to say that it's the same thing at all.
No, it's not the same thing.
It's the same sort of thought process and the same sort of pushing boundaries.
Exactly. It's very true that it's not the same thing.
Yeah, so it's kind of... Where else is this going to lead if they keep... forcing you to do things.
Right. So my point and why I'm using those examples, which are horrible, horrible examples, I use those examples because this might be a bad analogy, but this is what I said to Chloe last night. I used tobogganing, probably because the talk I gave yesterday was on tobogganing. Mm-hmm. And also I've used the word slippery slope. So how about you use a slope like a hill? It's like, let's say there's a hill that you want to go tobogganing on. Now, there is evidence, because people have gone down that hill before, that the bottom of the hill is hell. Like, it is nothing but pain. You're going to break bones. You're going to get hurt. There's no way that you are not going to have a problem by going down, getting to the end of that hill, right? It's just, that's the way it is. Every person who's ever been down that hill before has been seriously injured. And so I would say, as soon as you know somebody who's just going over the edge to start their journey down that hill, you want to start screaming at them, stop now, because it's nothing but danger at the bottom. That's what I mean with Trudeau. He's starting to take the country down that slope. He's still at the top of the hill, but he is no Hitler, he is no Stalin. I'm not saying that. I'm not undermining any of the atrocities.
Until he became that.
That's my point. There you go. Is that it starts somewhere. In that process of thinking, in that process of action, is what is leading the country downhill, right? And so So here's the thing. Let's go back to trucker protest, because it's the start. That's the beginning of the hill, right? It's these people decided they didn't want this mandate. They didn't agree with it. So they voiced their complaints, and none of the politicians ever addressed their complaints, particularly Trudeau. When I say Trudeau, I don't just mean Trudeau. I mean Freeland. I mean all his minions in the cabinet, et cetera, et cetera. But I mainly mean Trudeau. And they said, okay, we're going to start a convoy, and we're going to go to Parliament, and we're going to Parliament Hill, and we're going to protest. And it was well known. I mean, I knew about it before it happened, because it was, the ideas were all circulating. And I don't go into social media. Like, I don't go in and look, and I don't go into all these places, and I'm not looking for conspiracy theories. So these things were well enough documented that it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Nobody says anything. So all the truckers start from BC, they come from Alberta, Saskatchewan. People are just joining them as they're moving towards Ottawa. And same thing's happening on the East Coast. They're starting Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and they're starting to work their way towards Ottawa. And you've got video evidence of it. These guys are coming, and people are, waving their flags, the overhead bridge kind of thing, so that the highway's going to the truck goes underneath the bridge, and there's tons of people with their flags cheering them on top of the bridge, and everybody's like, it is so well documented. It's all over Facebook, it's on Instagram, and the mainstream media, which is funded by Trudeau, by the Liberal government, a ton, like I think it's something like 1.2 billion per year, something like this. I don't know, my number might be off. It's a lot of money, right? So they're not even really covering it, but everybody knows it's happening, and still nobody says anything. And they didn't even say that they didn't want the mandate, but they didn't say that protest was really going to be against the mandate, as it was, these are our concerns, and nobody will even talk to us. There's no democracy here. This is the government being authoritarian and saying that this is what's going to happen. And it was based off of very, very, very poor science and data. Very poor. And even now, it's still going through court case of the government against a couple of the leaders who organized the protest. It's coming out that the government just lied and lied and lied. I can't remember the name of the committee, but it's like the health committee who was reviewing the data. They never once said that they thought there should be a mandate of vaccines. But Trudeau would stand up in front of cameras and say, based on the science, this is what we're going to do. And he would never quote the science. He would never tell you where his science came from. Never told you sources, never told you data, nothing. He would just say, with a stupid smug look on his face, based on the science, we're locking down the country. Based on the science, we're mandating vaccines, etc., etc. And so it's coming out now that he just blatantly lied. And here's the problem. Okay, protesters get to Ottawa, and again, still nobody ever talks to them. There was one guy. It probably was not even a guy who was part of the protest. He was probably planted by the Liberals. That's a conspiracy theory, but who knows? It was one person who went with a rebel flag, like a U.S. rebel flag from the South, and he just went around. He went to different places. It's the same guy, and people basically kicked him out because they're like, that has nothing to do with this protest. And then the media, and particularly Trudeau, says, that there's rebel flags all over the place. It's like, it's one guy with one flag, and not only that, the protesters kicked him out. And then Trudeau also calls them all racist, misogynists, conspiracy theorists, and he's literally name calling these people, and he won't even speak to them. When the convoy got to Ottawa, Trudeau just says, I've been exposed to somebody with COVID, and he went and hid away in his cabin for a few days. He never once spoke to anybody. And that's the problem. There was no dialogue. There was no trying to find an understanding. There was no democracy. It was him saying, this is what's going to happen or not. And then he called the Emergencies Measures Act, which meant now he calls the Emergencies Act. So he says anybody who's supporting them, and he also did it retroactively. Anybody who has supported them, and that includes anybody giving a donation. So these guys got to run their trucks all the time. They're sitting away in Ottawa. It's minus 30 degrees, and they got to run their trucks to keep warm, right? And so if you decided you want to send $20 to donate to the convoy, so these guys can put fuel in their truck, you would have your bank account frozen, and that really happened. All these people, tons of people, from just had their bank account frozen, which meant now you can't pay your bills, you can't pay your mortgage, you can't buy food. Like, it's ridiculous, and that's authoritarian.
Yeah, that really shows that you really don't have anything.
Right.
Like, you can just lose all of it like
Right.
that. It can all just be held back from you with one click of a button.
Exactly.
Government.
And that's the point with the
That's
social
what's
credit
scary.
score. That's exactly what the social credit is. And that's an example that Trudeau blocking your bank account because he doesn't like your action of donating $20. He doesn't, or I mean, some people probably donate a lot more. He doesn't like your ideology, which disagrees with his ideology. So you disagree with the government, and they just turn you off.
Yeah.
Here's another example. One more example.
That's only gonna get worse.
Yeah. So here's another example. I don't know how many people caught on to this, but when Russia invaded Ukraine, right? Ukraine's without communications. So Zelensky asks Elon Musk if he can use Starlink. Do you know what Starlink is?
I've heard of it. What is
So
it?
Starlink is Elon Musk's thing, that it's his way of getting internet to anybody, no matter how remote you are. So we could get Starlink and go on. We can sign up, and it would cost us a monthly fee to have Wi-Fi, to have internet access. Now we don't need it because we've got Wi-Fi. We got but let's say you're in a very remote place. You're up in northern Canada. You're in the Ukraine, where you've just had all your communication towers, destroyed by Russia. Right? There's no communication. So Zelensky asks Musk, can we have Starlink to help us? And Musk says, all right, let's do it. So he goes and throws a satellite up over, right? So the Wi-Fi is coming down from satellites. I don't understand the processes, but right. So literally, touch of a button, Musk turns the internet on through Starlink to the Ukraine. Okay, now that's great. That's great. There's no problem with that. But here's the next thing. I don't know where the idea came from, where the request, or where this came from, but I don't know if it was Zelensky asked. I don't know if somebody else, or if it was just an idea. But they said to Musk, "Can you turn the cars off, the electric cars off, and all the Teslas off in Russia?" And the first thought should be, "Holy shit." With the touch of a button, they can just turn your car off. They don't like your idea. Now, I'm not talking about the Russia-Ukraine war here. I'm talking about the ability to turn your car off.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot about that. Like, just watching podcasts and videos, and yeah, like, first of all, they're trying to make all cars electric.
Yeah, exactly.
They're trying to make everybody go electric, and
there's no grid to support it. That's a whole other argument. We'll do that podcast on that later.
Yeah, but they're trying to make everybody electric, and then what does that mean? Now it's all their little robots that can go anywhere. That
they can control.
They can control zones. Like, your car will turn off if you go into a certain zone that's not permitted or something. Like, basically they control you. You can't leave somewhere. You don't have any other way because you can't use a freaking gas car. You don't have one.
Yeah. And whether or not
everything is online. You control your bank account. Your money is fake. It's a number in a bank.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of cash as well.
Yeah,
and they're trying to make a it's at the top of the hill. It's not at the bottom of the hill yet. But you can see everything falling into place that is turning into, ultimately, an authoritarian society or a dictatorship. And our recent examples, really, to me, now I do pay attention more to Canadian politics than anything else, than other. I do read the British news as well. I do read the Luxembourgish news, and but but I pay attention mostly to the Canadian stuff. So I am more familiar with that, and so I keep coming back to Trudeau because I know more about him, or at least about his policies, and it's why I dislike him so much, is because he's so far down that ideological path, and I think most people are waking up to it. I'm so scared that not enough people are.
Well, a lot of people, probably most people, no matter what, are gonna just listen to the government.
Yeah.
And no matter what anyone says, they're gonna listen to the government.
Too many people do put too much trust in the government, and what we have to realize is some of them probably really have great intentions, and maybe even a lot of them who are doing bad things started out with really great intentions and slowly went down the wrong path. Right? I'm not saying I would be any better if I was a politician. I think I would honestly get into it for the right reasons, but does that mean I wouldn't fall to the same problems that everybody else has? I can't say that. That would be, if you can't honestly see that everybody has faults, then you're not doing enough self-reflection. And if you're not doing enough self-reflection, you're not going to actually be able to guard yourself well enough against bad decisions. But politicians are just other people, and they're no better than you. They're no better than me. You're no better than anybody else, and I'm no better than anyone else. We're supposed to be voting for somebody to represent you, and then that person is supposed to represent their constituency. They're supposed to represent the people who voted them in, right? Which it's not really what's happening anymore, and it's so sad. I can't remember what that was making me think. There was something else I wanted to go off on there, but it makes me think of these books like Atlas Shrugged. It makes me think of 1984, Handmaid's Tale. All of these books really ought to be the Gulag Archipelago. That's a great that's really like necessary reading. Those are all books you need to read. And I'll be honest, I listened to Gulag Archipelago on audiobooks, and Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl as well. Those are like necessary reads that everybody should read and think. Like, just think, learn to think for yourself. Jordan Peterson asked this question a lot on his podcast, and it's when does a government go too far? And right now I'm very anti-liberal in Canada because I'm very anti-Trudeau. But let's say, so I'll be voting Conservative for sure the next time. But let's say the Conservatives get in, and then let's say they get in for a second term and a third term. I'll probably then be voting Liberal, because when does the government go too far? My answer is going to be, I think, as soon as you've been in power for more than 2 terms. Because again, this comes back to the balance that we talked about before. You know, let's say you have a left-leaning government, right? They can go, from center to the left a little bit, and then by the time they get voted out, then the right-leaning government takes it from the left, and they go, back over to center, and then a little bit to the right, and then hopefully they get voted out. And then you've always got these ideas that are more representative of society, that are going between trying to progress, right? I don't want to say that's not conservatism, being conservative. Like, the party used to be called the Progressive Conservatives in Canada, and now they're just conservatives. It's thinking about things with a little bit more clarity and taking your time and going a little bit slower, so that you don't rush into something too fast and do something too stupid. That's how I see being conservative. But you don't want to be too slow and not progress, so you have to have that progressive part as well. You have to have that liberal part. So that's what I mean is, you're going, if a government's going back and forth, country's government's going back left and right, you're basically always hovering around the center ideologically. Once you've got someone like Trudeau who's been in for too long, he's gone way too far to the left. He just has. And that's horrible. That's the left going too far.
How long has he been?
He's now been out 8 years now. So the next election won't be is not mandated until 25. It could happen anytime. But then, so I'll vote for Conservatives. But let's say the same thing, right? Conservatives, if they get in and they're in for too long, they could be going too far to the right, right? And that's a problem. So that's why I suggest 2 terms at the maximum. 1 term might not be enough to get anything done. So I'd say 2 terms, and then you gotta be out. That's one.
Is that not Canadian?
No, it's not. They sort of have something similar in the U.S. where a president can't do any more than 2 terms. The individual can't do more than 2 terms, but it doesn't mean the Republicans couldn't be in for 3, 4, 5 terms in a row, or the Democrats couldn't be in for 5 terms in a row. That's fine, but the individual president can only get 2 terms, so that they have to elect a new president. So that's my answer. That's when you go too far, and Trudeau's gone way too far. Do you have a last thought, comment? Because I did most of the talking this morning.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Can't really trust many things nowadays, and it's not. I don't know. I don't really see things getting better.
That's another one we'll talk about too soon. Is the AI, deep fakes.
Yeah.
Because then people are going to be saying stuff on social media, and you're going to think, oh, he said that. He didn't even really say it.
It's true. Thanks for the ride.
You have a good day. Love you.
Me too.
Make it a great day.
Peace, love.
Release the inner
love,
Goggins.
and Tickers.
Inner Goggins.
Peace, Dad.
Bye.
Bye-bye.